Okay, there we go. Greetings. It is Tuesday. It is November. And let's hope we have a country tomorrow. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I mean, I guess there won't be riots today. The riots would be tomorrow, wouldn't they? But we'll see. There's already, I hope not. Let us turn to In Memoriam. It is on page 173. Tennyson's In Memoriam. We'll start with the prologue. It's usually called the prologue. And it's important to realize that this prologue was written just before he published it. He published it in 1850. So this was like written in 1849. So I want you to realize that the prologue sounds more, strong and less doubtful than the rest of it. So in other words, when we move from the prologue to number 1, the first section, it's like we're crashing down. But it's clear that that's what he wanted. Oh, did you figure out what to do? Did you? Well, if you were calling a doctor, or you just had something? Oh, any insight? One second.
I don't even know how to drive. Any questions you might have about anything you still have? Make sure you know everything that you're going to be reading. Still being headaches. If everyone screams.
Thank you, Ellie. Hey, good man. You're fast. We just listen. Yeah, just listen. Yeah, we would just listen and stuff like that. Instead of looking at it, kind of get a sense of it. So, all right. So, again, when we move from here, it's going to crash down. But understand that Tennyson wanted us to read it this way. So he wanted to start with an affirmation that's more, full of faith. He wanted to make it so that the journey is full circle. Right? He starts here, and it'll come out. But this is how he wanted us to. And it was this prologue that I saw in a hymnal when I was in England once, sent as a hymn. Right? Yeah. I mean, In Memoriam can be sung to the doxology. All the stanzas can be sung to the doxology. It's that rhythm. Strong Son of God, immortal love, whom we that have not seen thy face, by faith and faith alone embrace, believing where we cannot prove. See, it's 4, 4, 4, 4. Okay. The Bible doesn't often give us definitions, specific definitions. We will leave that to the systematic theologians. But it does give us a definition of faith. Where do you get the definition of faith in the Bible?
Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Good. And where do you find that in the Bible? Not Romans. Not Corinthians. Yep. Yeah, just keep going. Just keep going. Well. Okay, where do we have a whole chapter that lists all the people of faith in the Bible?
Oh.
Yeah, it's Hebrews 11. Okay, Hebrews 11. That's precisely why I say yeah. So, but it depends how much theology you've studied. They debate whether Paul wrote it.
It feels like Paul.
I'll tell you what happened. Paul, and people have said this before. It is by Paul, but Paul wrote it in Hebrew or Aramaic, and somebody else, either Clement or Barnabas, translated it into Greek. And that's an old idea. And the reason is that when you read it in English, you're sure it's Paul. But when you read it in Greek, you're like, no, this isn't Paul. But if Paul wrote it in Aramaic, and then it was... Again, what's weird is it's the only epistle it doesn't start with. This is Paul. Hey, guys, But maybe it was a sermon, some people think, Some people read it liturgically. So, yeah.
I just say that because my pastor growing up thinks it was written by Paul.
Yeah. It's a debated thing. But people in the old church debated it too. Anyway, so this is what he's obviously referring to here. Believing where we cannot prove. Faith is the evidence of things not seen, the assurance of things hoped for. Hebrews 11:1. That's of course the King James. Again, this is partly about faith. How do we have faith in things that we cannot see? Including Hallam is gone now. He doesn't see Hallam. He can trust that he's in heaven with God, but he can't see him. So this is going to be about faith, and sometimes it's faith in things that we can't see. Can somebody tell me what faith doesn't mean? Faith does not mean believing in things you know aren't true. Okay, that's sort of the modern secular, that's what they think faith is. Faith is believing in something you know isn't true. That's not faith, that's stupidity. Okay, but a lot of people don't understand. Faith is believing in things you can't see. But it's not irrational. But a lot of people are against faith or miracles and things like that. Today, not just today, for the last couple of years. Thine are these orbs of light and shade. Thou, the thou of course is God. Thou madest life in man and brute. Thou madest death, and lo, thy foot is on the skull which thou hast made. That's a pretty dark image of nature. But thou wilt not leave us in the dust. Thou madest man, he knows not why. He thinks he was not made to die. And thou hast made him. Thou art just. Think of the word theodicy, which is from the word theo, which means Greek, and dike means justice. Right? So this is a theodicy. We're going to wrestle about God's justice, or lack of justice, if you decide that, right? And here, he's going to struggle with this over the whole course of In Memoriam. But here, he's not so much struggling. He says, he thinks he was not made to die, and thou hast made him, thou art just. What is he doing when he just says, thou art just? He's not so much arguing, he's what? He's stating, he's asserting. It's almost like the end of Job. It's just like, okay, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to close my mouth now and just listen. Right? It's a bend of the knee right now, which is not negative, but it's a bend of the knee. But the rest of it in Memoriam, he's going to wrestle with it. Right. Yeah, that's not what it's clear that that's how he wanted us to read. He wanted to read this bookended with the prologue and the epilogue where there's faith.
This is like his thesis statement.
I mean, it's a good way to put it.
A good thesis spoils your argument, right? Like say, here's what we're going to do, and then you explain it.
And then do it on and on and on. I mean, here, but in other words, he wanted us when we read this as an epic, and this is a great epic, and this is a unique epic because it's. Speaking in my own opinion, I think this is the only epic ever written that doesn't have any boring parts. I think every single section is actually a good poem in this, which is pretty unique. I mean, Homer's got lots of boring bits. Virgil has lots of boring bits. Milton has lots of boring bits. Even Dante has a few boring bits less. High school. Oh, they actually like all of the Iliad?
No, some of the high school people I read said the entire book is boring.
Oh, the entire book. Oh, I see what you mean. That's just boring bits. But
There's some boring bits.
there's some boring bits. Yeah, that's right. Catalog of ships. Yeah. It's important to me since my relatives live in a city in Sparta that's named on the catalog of ships. That's pretty. I'm Spartan. I know, it's pretty amazing. I'm not just a Spartan. My Greek name is Leonidas. Okay, come and go. You just come and go as you need. Okay, no, go. Yeah. No, go. If you want to come back, but you're fine. I'll take good care of you. Go text Ashley. Maybe she's around. Oh, she's working? Okay.
I'll watch this video.
Yeah, just take your time. That's right. Listen. That's a good point. She said, "Listen to it. Don't watch it. Listen to it." That's good. Thank you. Yeah, you don't need the lights like that. Okay. Yeah, let's know. Okay. I hope you'll be okay, Sophia. Difficult Halloween. Hope she'll be okay. Your friends seem to think. It just seems to me if it's been 3 days and she's still walking, but I don't know. And she's been 3 days and she's still walking, but maybe there's still something there. Yeah, so that could be. Yeah, she'll be okay. Yeah, it's like HBU, no help.
It's so interesting. I know, like with the insurance, I guess I'll just die.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, it's been such an interesting semester. Like, oh no, I hope none of us get COVID. And
I know, yeah.
Hurricanes, and now she has a
concussion. Yeah, I know, that's right. Other things are going on.
Something else is gonna finish us off for COVID.
I know, amazing. Wow. Okay, somebody just asked something. What were we talking about?
You're from Sparta?
That's right. Yeah. Why did I bring up? Oh, we're talking about the catalog of ships. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I am. Yeah. And my Greek name is Leonidas. I mean, Lewis. Like Leonidas is very Spartans. That's me. So, I know. I think I'm more Athenian by nature. But staying up all night writing books, never ending, and all that. I've got a Spartan thing. A drunken worship. Is that what your name means? Wait a minute. What's that?
That is a question for the books.
Oh, Salinas, that guy, yeah, the old guy. Oh, man. Yeah, no, that was just weird. I'm like, what? Yeah, there we go. There actually is a movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats or something with, yeah, it's the guy, all the girls, like the handsome guy, Clooney, George Clooney, I think is in it. Yeah. That's an old, that's an old black maid movie, I think. Yeah, low budget, but yeah, it's pretty famous. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you suspect it, but I think this whole class has a concussion right now. Okay, anyway, so thou, what's that? You can put Sophia, I know, she'll make it. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we're on page 173. Sorry, in the very beginning of In Memoriam. And again, we're saying that Tennyson wanted to sort of begin with faith so we can fall and come back, to give it a circular journey. He wanted to put it in that context. And, again, that's a little bit different. But we'll see it. It's such an abrupt change when we get to number 1. So at this point, thou art just. They call that the bend of the knee. It's an assertion. He's going to have to wrestle with that and feel it along his pulse by the end. But right now, he's asserting it. That was loud. Thou seemest human and divine, the highest, holiest manhood thou, struggling with Jesus, right? Our wills are ours, we know not how, our wills are ours to make them thine. Again, right now, that's still the assertion. That is the goal that he's going to try to reach over the course of In Memoriam. So he's stating it now. That maybe he didn't want to scandalize his readers too much by starting boom with number 1 that seems like I said, a lot of people that read A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis, they're like, if it's the first one, you start reading it, it's like, this is the great Christian apologist, what's going on here, So maybe he wanted to avoid that, I don't know. Oh, our wills are ours to make them thine. I think so. I'm trying to remember where. I think you're thinking somewhere in the Confessions, I think. Well, unless you're thinking of our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. Yeah.
That's something different. I mean,
Something else?
Which is definitely confessions, but I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like he talks about the idea of the will, and turning our will, and there's this statement like that in Dante's Paradiso too. Our little systems, all the things we try to build, probably including theology, philosophy, everything. Our little systems have their day. They have their day and cease to be. They are but broken lights of thee, and thou, O Lord, art more than they. All of these things. Let's begin with that sense of faith, that sense of knowledge that God is above and can control before he's going to crash down. But right now we begin that way. We human beings, we have but faith we cannot know, for knowledge is of things we see, and yet we trust it comes from thee, a beam in darkness, let it grow. And in the beginning, that's all a beam, like think of a flashlight, just a tiny beam in darkness, and the whole movement of the In Memoriam is to slowly expand till it becomes a full light. But in the beginning, it's just a pinpoint of light. And we're going to watch it grow over the course of this amazing epic. Let knowledge grow from more to more, but more of reverence in us dwell, that mind and soul according well may make one music as before. Now, we would probably not say mind and soul, we would probably say what? Mind and heart or head and heart, but that's basically what he means. He wants to bring those two back. Maybe his heart still tells him Hallam's alive and there's purpose and God loves us, but right now his mind seems to say no, the opposite. And he wants to bring them back into harmony with one another. But it's going to take a lot of work to get it. We need to bring them back. Now, I actually read that a little bit wrong. Look at the end of the stanza I just read, and how is it different than the end of all the other stanzas? Good. It doesn't end with a period. So it really needs to be read, that mind and soul according well may make one music as before, but vaster. Right? That's what we want. We want to go full circle but end up higher. Because, again, I think most of us can deal with grief if we feel like we're learning something from it, or God is making us stronger, or making our family stronger, or whatever. The hardest thing to deal with is pain and suffering that seems to be meaningless. And of course, in the beginning, it does seem to be meaningless. But if we can find, and I also, it's like, if God makes me go through this and then takes me back to exactly where I was before, it's like, God, really? Was that necessary? Okay? So we want to restore the music, we want to be higher, right? So we're going to end up at a place called the New Jerusalem that's like Eden, but it's much, much better. That's what it means to come full circle. I'm teaching the Aeneid in my other class. We're going to lose Troy, but we're going to get Rome. But we want Rome to be greater than Troy. Not the same as Troy, but it's got to be greater than.
Abundant recompense thing.
Say it again?
Abundant recompense.
Oh, very good. I haven't thought about it that way, but it is an abundant recompense. The Felix culpa, the happy fall. That's cool. Let me write that in my notes here. I like that. It is a kind of abundant recompense. It's right. It's getting back with it. She likes that or doesn't like that? No, you don't like the idea of the culpa? Wait a minute. You're not starting to question original sin again, I hope. I thought we escaped. I mean, it's not just him, but the one that really starts is Augustine. I mean, there are others, but he mentions it earlier. Yeah, Felix culpa. Right, the fortunate fall. But again, it's not fortunate in and of itself. It's only fortunate viewed when we say eschatologically in terms because it leads to the coming of Christ. I mean, you like the phrase eucatastrophe, don't you? That's kind of similar. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And even Lewis, who likes Phil, would say that even if we didn't fall, we would have ended up being in God's direct presence. That's what happens at the end of Paralundra. They don't fall, but sooner or later they will move upward. But we would not have needed death. But it is, maybe you could call it a Felix culpa, in that it allows God to give a greater expression of His love in that sense.
It's a great expression of love, but but man turning away from God and sinning and choosing other than God can be greater, I don't think, than...
Are you all right with calling it Good Friday? Are you all right with calling it Good Friday?
Yes, because I'd like to teaching good things afterwards. But I think that, in a broader sense, that,
I think you're probably right. It would have been better if we hadn't fallen. I get that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, that's just all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true.
If we were still in the garden with God or something like that, in His presence, we can all agree that that'd be better than the way we are now.
Right.
I don't know if I disagree that it's better than where we'll end up.
Yeah, we will end up in a better place. I mean, I love the description. It's like the tree of life is up and down the river with, it's like it's a giant, it seems like it's a giant tree of life feeding all the nations. But yeah, I mean, it would have been nice if we didn't have to learn it the hard way. Maybe, yeah, I agree.
It's kind of the idea that God works out the negative things.
Right.
It's good for the good of those who serve.
Right. It is fortunate, but again, only looking at it from hindsight and looking back. It's interesting. Have you written a poem about that yet? You should write a poem.
I've written a lot of poems. I'll have a look for
See?
Have you read the Silmarillion?
I've read portions of
Have you read the beginning of the Silmarillion?
Yeah, that's right. You'll be doing that, honors. Oh, well, you'll do that pretty soon. In honors, the last semester you read the beginning, the Unedited.
Do you read The Lord of the Rings?
No, just that. All they do is the Unedited.
Which is so funny because no one ever reads the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
My brother's reading the Silmarillion. He's 12.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
My brother, it's his favorite book, and he reads it over and over.
And all honesty, the only people that I know that read the Silmarillion are those complete overachievers that
Token fanatics that have to know it all.
Constantly reading. No one else
Claire's
is
not
good
here,
work.
but that's her. We have the whole shelf of all the books.
Oh, okay.
Literally a whole bookshelf full.
Great stuff. All right, come back. You guys are wondering today. I know. wandering around. So, again, may make one music as before, but vaster. So we've broken out to achieve the higher level. That's what we want to bring back head and heart, which is important in a scientific age too. And all that, so bring it all back and move higher. We are fools and slight. We mock thee when we do not fear, but help thy foolish ones to bear. Help thy vain worlds to bear thy light. There's actually two ways you can read bear thy light. What are the two ways you can read that phrase, bear thy light? Let me say it again. So, bear thy light can mean... So, bear thy light can mean... What's it? Good. So to carry it to the rest of the world, right? And the Victorian age, it's kind of funny, even though they were getting a little bit more liberal from a Christian point of view, is a great age of missions. You know, the most famous missionary, of course, was Dr. Livingston. I presume, right? So that was, you know, that spirit of evangelicalism to spread, you know, to the whole world, and not just missionaries of Christianity, but missionaries of democracy, capitalism, you know, health, all that sort of stuff. The phrase they used to use, which probably put you in jail today, was the white man's burden. Although the way they used it was very similar to what Americans... What phrase did we use in the 19th century saying that we're going to spread all this good stuff to the entire North American continent? Might you know what it's called? All your high school history teachers love this word. It starts with an M. Two words. Manifest destiny. Remember manifest destiny? You ever heard that?
So my high school history, I was doing like honor stuff. So
You
that's
get to
where
the-
I learned like Sophocles.
Oh, okay, so do that. But yeah, that phrase "manifest destiny" means it is the clear destiny of heaven that we are to take. And again, it's usually described as liberal democracy and free market capitalism. We're going to take the blessings of that and spread it. And of course, we did spread it across the whole. And those Canadians, we just ignored them. We spread it across.
Like that phrase is like considered like the greatest evil that America has committed.
Now you're right. Today, suddenly, yeah, now we're evil that we've done that. I know, it's amazing. We've turned around. Now America's evil. It's weird. It's strange. But again, the Victorians had that sense. Well, you might recognize that if you like Oscar Wilde. They were earnest, right? They would call it earnestness, that desire, you know, the importance of being earnest. It's kind of a joke. That was their earnestness, their Protestant work ethic, whatever. It's you need to carry it and bring it out to the rest of the world. So it means bear thy light, but it also means bear under thy light. Remember what's the idea in the Little Black Boy? What's the mother tell him our skins for? Yeah, it's for protecting us until we can stand in God's presence. I'm not saying Tennyson necessarily has Blake in mind, but I mean, can we also bear up under the fullness of thy grace and things? Seems to mean both at the same time. Forgive what seem my sin in me. He's asking forgiveness before we jump into the doubt and the wrestling. What seem my worth since I began, for merit lives from man to man, and not from man, O Lord, to thee. In other words, merit's a human thing. Forgive my grief for one removed, thy creature, that's Hallam, whom I found so fair. I trust he lives in thee, and there I find him worthier to be loved. Well, he's going to have to work himself to that too. Okay, but right now, yes, you can take better care of him than I can. Forgive these wild and wandering cries, confusions of a wasted youth. Forgive them where they fail in truth, and in thy wisdom make me wise. I mean, ultimately, these wild and wandering cries are going to be what? These wild, it's the poem. I mean, speaking of the poem itself, will be capturing that. And he hopes, again, to reach a point of wisdom. And I think he's speaking to us as the reader, too, that we will reach a point of wisdom. Right? People in the Victorian age would have read this poem very seriously, like they would have wrestled with it. I mean, there are some people that still read poetry seriously, but not like these guys. I mean, like, boom, yeah, you still do, I know. Right? But here, I mean, just imagine a whole reading public reading this. And I said it to you at the last class that there would be sermons where they'd mention this and stuff. I mean, it was very, very common. Okay. Now we jump down, and number one is the real beginning, right? The beginning of his grief. I held it truth. Notice the use of the past tense, which suggests what? I held it truth. Yeah, I don't anymore, right? There was a time when Village Grove, Stream, or there was a time in those crises. I mean, in some ways this is a crisis poem on a huge scale. It is a crisis poem at a much more multi-level. I held it truth with him who sings to one clear harp in diverse tone, that men may rise on stepping stones of their dead selves to higher things. So what did I used to have faith in? Let me say it again? Good. We'll keep going. A kind of progress here, almost a spiritual progress, that we will keep moving. Right? No, this is not the end. Right? What is it? The gray rain curtain of the world shall roll apart, and all shall turn to silver glass, and then you'll see it. Thank you. What will we see, Gandalf? White shores, and beyond that, a far green country under a swift sunrise. That doesn't sound so bad. Remember that great scene when Gandalf and Pippin are on the Minas Tirith? What's that? Isn't that the best scene? And if you watch the movie again, that beautiful scene, it's up on the tower of Minas Tirith. If you listen when he says it, it's the first time you hear the tune of Into the West. You remember that? And I don't know if we even hear it again till the end. But just a little bit there. It's so beautiful. Can we hear it again one more time? Oh, maybe we do hear it again. Okay, I didn't think about that. That's right. When he's given, I may not be able to carry it, but I can carry you in it. That's so good. You're going to be in the class. I'm so glad. We going to get anybody else? When do you graduate, Amelia?
In the spring.
In the spring. Do you need any more classes?
I do not.
Oh, you don't? Okay, because we can get you in there. If you want, I don't know if you want a night class. You have a life now. You have like a husband. You probably don't want a night class. Oh. They're going to give you
They're going to let me take advanced British literature.
Oh, that makes sense. At least there's a close. Okay, good. And then they'll do an exception form. Okay, good. But what's it? Abigail Seymour. I don't know if you know her. She's a senior. She just told me she might take Lord of the Rings, so we'll see. It's good stuff. You're still too young. Yeah. If you came here with like 100 elective hours, we'd get you in there. Great stuff. So I did believe in that sort of spiritual progress, that growth upward, moving up. But who shall so forecast the years and find in loss a gain to match, or reach a hand through time to catch the far-off interest of tears? Now, oddly enough, where is he getting his metaphor from in that second stanza? Who can reach a hand through time to catch the far-off interest of tears? You know where that metaphor comes from? The far-off interest of tears? Where do you get interest? In a bank. This is a business metaphor. Okay. In other words, In other words, what he hopes, but he's doubting that. Okay. Maybe I'll get interest on my investment. Well, what am I investing? What am I putting in the bank? My sorrow, my tears. I mean, those almost literally the tears are going to the bank, and will they pay off interest? It's a very Victorian thing to use that kind of an unexpected metaphor, right? Like, let us go then, you and I, when the world, it's like a patient ether eyes, right? You know the link to C.S. Lewis there? He wrote a poem where he said something like, I've tried and tried as hard as I am able, but I can't imagine a night like a patient etherized upon a table. Because he didn't like Tennyson, Eliot in the beginning. But they came together later. They respected each other later. They worked together on the translation of the Psalms a little bit. So they did come together slowly. Yeah, he didn't like the modern stuff. It's really funny. I know, yeah, they kind of came back together, so. Wow. But so now, anybody here into classical music? Okay. Do you know what a motive or a motif is? Can you explain what that is? He's a music guy.
Okay, motif is typically just a series of few notes of a
Good.
specific interval or pattern that's repeated throughout the song.
Good. And when it's repeated throughout, let's say it's a symphony, is it repeated exactly the same way?
No, it'll be repeated. Sometimes it'll be in a minor interval.
Good.
Sometimes it'll be in That's-
This happens a lot
Where?
in the Lord of the Rings soundtrack.
It does. That's it. Because he is now Wagner really took this seriously. And when we talk about Wagner, we don't just use the word motif or motive. You know what word we use? Is logo. We call it the leitmotif. L-E-I-T. Leitmotif. It's still the same basic idea. But Wagner, and of course, and this is picked up by Broadway too. If you watch it Broadway, it's like Camelot. Every character is going to have a song or a little clip that's linked to them, and as soon as you hear it, motifs are used in. The best is Lord of the Rings, Howard Shore. But think about John Williams' score for Star Wars, right? And there's certain things that are linked to other things like that, right? So, of course, the most famous motive of all comes from Beethoven's Fifth. Da 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 da, that sort of short boom, and it just keeps coming back, and it might come back in 4/4 or 3/4 or whatever, but it's moving. And what does that motive do for the piece, for the symphony?
It makes it recognized.
Good. It's recognized, gives it unity as it moves. Okay. Now, why am I telling you this right now? This epic is very musical, and it uses motifs, and one of the most common ones is that hand. As you read, look at how many times the image of a hand, and even though we're not even reading the whole thing, you'll see how many times the hand comes, but in all different ways. Sometimes it's reaching up, sometimes it's reaching down, sometimes it's reaching out. But these are ways of. It's easy to tell a story in a novel, but to tell a story in music, you need something for the listener to hang on to, right? And in a real symphony, the composer is working through something, wrestling with something that they're trying to get to. And that's one of the things, like, my daughter was a vocal performance, and when you do your performance, whatever it is, you have to make up, your what do you call that, the bulletin, the program. You have to make up the program, but you also have to make up program notes, where you not only give a little bit about the composer, but what's going on in this, what is being worked out, or whatever. And some of the students do a good job, some are not too good, but they have to write that out, because and you know what that's called? It's called music literature. Like, you can actually read a symphony the way you read a novel. There are interpretive strategies for doing that, and he uses some of those in here. What?
That music literature is my favorite aspect.
Oh, is that your favorite? Yeah, I just think it's so neat to realize that there's something going on there. You don't know it until you study it. You may feel it, like you may feel that motive coming back again and again, but you may not know it till you study it. And again, just watch specifically for the hand. It's going to come back, but in different ways. And like I said, the motive is so different when it's major or minor. It gets mysterious and strange and moving around, So if we know we're in the Shire when we hear what little motive? Tune. Da da dee da 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 da, which was stolen from the hymn. It says Our Father's World. Yeah, I bet it's almost exactly the same. It does work. It does. Exactly. It does sound pastoral. Yeah.
My favorite modern classical motif is probably Alliteration, because, like you say,
Oh yeah. Da 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 da.
you say that, and everybody just immediately plays it in their brain.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Play it out loud.
Yeah, it's like just now. That's one of the most recognizable.
It is.
Yeah, like that's the theme that's playing when Luke is staring wistfully off.
Oh, that's right. Da 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 dee, da da da. Man, we're losing it. I tell you, we're going to. But it does. And in fact, one of my former students, do any of you do that? Set your ringtones. You actually have that? Because some people do that, so I don't know how to do it. But anyway, I knew when her mother was calling her because it said da da da. So I just thought about her mom, but I remember, your mom's calling, so I don't know what way. You need that? Okay, put that down there. You gotta find it. I don't know how to do that, but it's so cool. And I still don't understand why nobody's sold. Maybe it's there and I don't know about it. But when you do your GPS, and it's almost always a female voice, and she talks. Can you buy something with a different voice, like the voice of Gandalf is directing you?
Have you ever seen the Prologue videos?
You can do it?
My dad.
Has
I
that?
don't know what you download, but
Oh.
he switches the voices.
And what are some of the voices you listen to?
His most recent one is the Cookie Monster.
What the Cookie Monster?
Super dramatic.
Oh my gosh! Probably get in the car.
YouTube videos of the on GPS.
What was it, Tom?
Recordings.
What's the Star Wars, the dinosaur thing, and the Empire Strikes Back?
Oh,
They
okay.
got a Yoda one and a Darth Vader one. Their YouTube videos are really funny.
Oh, okay.
Yoda.
I'll tell you. Okay. But wouldn't you love to have like Yoda directing you in the car? Wrong turn you took, idiot! You know. Oh man. You know, and it's you know, this nice GPS lady's voice is not preparing men for marriage, because when you're driving it tells you really nice, and then if you take a wrong thing it doesn't say idiot, recalculating it, you know, it's not preparing you well. Anyway, oh man, what a day. Okay, come back in. I don't know. They're not. That's not their purpose, but you know, be quiet. It'd be nice to just say, "Be quiet." You know. Anyway, what was that? So again, but who can forecast? How do I know there will really be? Who can reach their hand out to the future and see that it will be but vaster? All I see is pain in a world of pain. Right? What is it? Why are your eyes dead like Linton's eyes? Why is there no heather in your hair? Why isn't there the smell of heather in your hair? That's Laurence Olivier. That's Heathcliff talking to Kathy's sister-in-law. What's her name? Isabella. Poor Isabella. The way they destroy her. And if well, I don't know. If you've ever seen the Laurence Olivier movie, it's done in flashback, Wuthering Heights, and so in the very beginning, the guy comes and we go into the old Heathcliff's house and we see this, you know, this sort of old, you know, crusty woman or something, and it takes you a while to realize that's the lovely Isabella. When we see her later on, it's like she's just been destroyed. What's that? Well, not in the movie version of Laurence Olivier. It's in the movie version. The guy comes over to the Grange and tries to come in, and they're still there, and the way they do it is, well, I think it's in the book too. He's sleeping in the room and he hears something and he reaches his hand out. And Kathy's hand touches him and he goes, "What was it?" Right? And then in the movie, Helen, what's the maid, governess lady, Nellie, is it? Nellie, yeah. Then she tells the whole story in flashback of the first half of the novel, and it's just beautifully done. But like I said, when you realize that that's Isabella, that poor old lady, it's like what he's done to her. Why are your eyes dead? Anyway, I'm sorry, get in there. Poor Heathcliff. He brings it upon himself. But Laurence Olivier was great. I missed him. Anyway, okay. So he says, so what am I going to do? Let love clasp grief, lest both be drowned. Let darkness keep her raven gloss. Ah, sweeter to be drunk with loss, to dance with death, to beat the ground. Yeah. There is not one right way to grieve, right? There are many different positive ways, but there are some wrong ways to grieve. And one wrong way to grieve, yeah, that's a good point. Let's kill everybody. Right? Here, I mean, and you know, this is the Irish way of grieving. Okay, just stay drunk for the next year. Okay, that's not. You know, that's just how they live all the time. That's true. Yeah, we don't need. But I mean, one of the temptations in grief, and of course, you know, in the beginning. But I mean, you know, anything right. But you don't want to keep doing this. You don't want to. If you're using alcohol and grief to sort of deaden your human emotion, you know, to just give way and just, I'm not going to be a moral, ethical creature. I'm just going to give way. That's just not healthy. That's a temptation. Okay, just stop being human, so to speak, and just give way to that. To be, he says, to be drunk with loss, to dance with death, to beat the ground, to worship the goat along with Maria or whatever. I don't know. That's going to be in my mind for the next week. It's just. Don't anybody Twitter that. Okay. Anyway, but the. What is when? Oh. Well, if you take the right amount, you know, it will enhance fellowship. You know. Yeah. The right amount. Okay. Are you holding up some liquor in that thing there? Is he saying my coffee's spiked? I mean, I'm not sure what you're saying. Okay. First of all, if that's like Frappuccino, from that's more drug than anything else you can get. Half caffeine and half sugar. That's, you know.
There is actual espresso in here.
Oh, there's espresso. Okay. Espresso beans and stuff. You're not one of those people whose drug of choice is chocolate-covered espresso beans to keep you awake at night. Some students do that. Was it too much? Did it hit you lame? That's pretty. Strong stuff. Anyway, so one of the temptations is just to give into revelry. Just give up. Right? Didn't I tell you, Preston, about the Irish funeral where they cried so much that the corpse got drunk? Think about that for a second. Okay, anyway. We're going to give you a concussion today. Anyway, so better to do that then than that the victor hour should scorn the long result of love and boast. Behold the man that loved and lost, but all he was is overworn. Better to just give way to revelry than to have people say, look, he just lost everything. I'm just not going to think about it anymore. I'm just going to give way to excess and move on. But that's not a very healthy way. The pagan revelry way of doing it is not the best way to do it. Okay? Number 2 is going to show us other extreme of what some people do in grief. Some people may just give way to revelry, right? Here's another one. And he imagines, he's not there, but he imagines himself at the graveyard. And yews are some of those, the trees they build at graveyards that they're like forever, you know. Old yew which graspest at the stones that name the underlying dead, thy fibers net the dreamless head, thy roots are wrapped about the bones. That's kind of scary and comforting at the same time. Like the roots are all twined together with the bones underground and everything's together. The seasons bring the flower again and bring the firstling to the flock. And in the dusk of thee the clock beats out the little lives of men. Oh, not for thee the glow, the bloom, who changest not in any gale, nor branding summer suns avail to touch thy 1,000 years of gloom. And gazing on thee sullen tree, sick for thy stubborn hardihood, I seem to fail from out my blood and grow incorporate into thee. All right, if one extreme is giving your way to revelry, to excess, what's another extreme way that's not healthy in the long run? What do some people do? You get what he wants to do here? What is your...
wants to just kind of like float over or like be incorporated into the tree.
Good.
Like the romantic culture when it's oblivion or just kind of like...
Good, very good, good. That's kind of just stop feeling. One is just go to excess and revelry. The other is just, I'm not going to feel anymore. Right? And the odd thing about it is you might think that method of just stop feeling would be something only men do. But I've seen a lot of women do that too, in a way. Like, I got this grief and I'm just not going to feel it. I'm going to steel myself, right? And I've just seen that a lot. I would think men would be tempted to do that more, but I've seen a lot of women, maybe it's just like, maybe they're afraid if they give into their grief it will never stop. But sometimes I'll see some that just, boom, you know. Because of the,
it's a way of like, you tell yourself that you're caring for other people and then you just don't...
that's a good way. Maybe that would be it, yeah. I think you're right. I can't show it. I can't show it if my kids see me crying or something. But it's just interesting because, you know, you would think, no, women are okay with showing their tears, right? But and maybe you're right. Maybe that is it. It's like, I've got to be strong for the family. And so I'm not going to show any tears. And I'm going to be stoic about it. Right? And that's a temptation too. I'm not going to. So sometimes you just need. You don't want to cry forever, but you do need to let out the tears. Okay. Sometimes they call them cathartic tears. All right. Do you feel better after a good laugh or a good cry? What do you think? I would say, you know, you would think it would be a good laugh, but some people feel better after a good cry.
A lot of awkwardness depending on the situation.
Well, yeah. And a lot of Texas girls call it ugly tears. They don't like ugly tears. I never heard that phrase up north, but Texas, yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, the girls, you know, they're ugly tears. What's that? But wear makeup.
You gotta pick which days. Like, do I feel emotionally weak? Should I wear mascara today?
But anyway, this is a temptation, and it's because you see the tree never dies, but in a sense it never lives. I mean, let's just mark time and put ourselves in there and rise above the feeling, and that's almost kind of Buddhist in a way. It's Stoic or Buddhist. You rise above pleasure and pain, and you just ride along there. And I love that phrase is in my head a lot. The clock beats out the little lives of men. Maybe you'll feel that when you hear the clock tower next time over there. We don't hear it over here, but over the Hinton building. And by the way, it's a pretty good thing because it is just electronic. It's not real bells, but sometimes it sounds pretty real. I don't know if we'll ever get, I guess somebody's got to give money so we can get an actual bell tower. A clarion, I think they call that. No, carillon is what it's called. The suite of bells, it's called a carillon. Carillon. And all that sort of stuff.
Carrying bells, and you think that's a cool, but it's actually, I'm thinking like carrying birds.
Carrion. No, it's carillon. It's spelled differently. Yeah. Carillon, I guess I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced. But those and bell towers. Right? So here, it's like, well, let's just, like Abigail, let's merge with it. You get this in some of Keats's poems. Let's just merge and lose myself, merge with the urn or something like that, and give way to oblivion. So in a way, these are two extremes. And it's okay as a short-term solution, but you certainly don't want this as a long-term solution. Right? I mean, it's actually Jesus who said, let the dead bury their own dead. Right? And you do need to move on. The Bible never says that you should stay in mourning forever. The Bible also says that, if your sibling, if your husband or wife dies, you can remarry. Hopefully, that's not because you killed them. But, it does say you can remarry. But anyway, look at number 7. This is a real dark one. This poem is very real because in this poem, Tennyson does all the things that people do when they're grieving. So, dark house by which once more I stand, here in the long unlovely street, doors where my heart was used to beat so quickly, waiting for a hand. Oh, that motive has come back already. Right? The motif. Okay. Do you understand where he's going here? To his friend's house, where he used to get together with Hallam and do their walking trip or whatever. What is one thing people do when they're grieving sometimes? Where do they visit? Good. So the old phrase for that is our old haunts. I don't know if people still use that phrase. Our old haunts, the places we used to go. If maybe it was just a boyfriend and girlfriend and one of them died, we used to go to this park or we used to go to this ice cream place, whatever. Just places that have significance where you were together. And you sometimes feel almost like a ghost. You're haunting those places. So he's visiting that place and he remembers how excited he was. And again, they're not gay, okay? This is Americans don't understand this. This is why I said I'm glad the New Zealanders made Lord of the Rings. Because if Americans made Lord of the Rings, they never would have allowed Frodo and Sam to be that close. No American movie maker would have done that. Because of course that's our problem. They're more firm in their masculinity in New Zealand. At least they were 20 years ago. I don't know now when the movie was made. I don't know. I was saying that to somebody. He said, I know a lot of guys from Australia. They're all a bunch of wimps. So maybe they've changed. I don't know. But they used to be Crocodile Dundee.
You only want to be like in America earnest about your emotions if it's like romantic love. That's kind of the only excuse, I guess.
That's interesting. Maybe, yeah.
Earnest and tender in the Lord of the Rings as they speak to each other. In a brotherly sort of way, not in a romantic way. So, but I wonder if that's what it is. Like you're only allowed to be like tender if you're talking to your girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah, something. But it could be. I mean, here, and let me show you that we understand this even in America, right? If a man says to his male friend, "Hey, let's go up to the woods, and we'll make a fire, and we'll sit around, and we'll share about our life and our deepest, desires," and so, okay. But if he says, let's go up to the woods, build a camp, sit down, and talk about the deep part of our life, and while we do it, we're going to kill some animals. It's okay. Is it? It's just kind of funny. So just think about that for a moment. It's true. Anyway.
Counterbalances.
Or beer. Okay, yeah. Enough beer, and we'll just share everything.
I was reading something about that last semester.
Yeah.
Like, guys, because they are so normally, in general, involved,
Right.
like women, if they really want to hang out, they have to find some sort of way to.
There's going to be an excuse. There's going to be a reason.
They can't just. They have like an excuse, but they can't really say that they're gonna chat and share.
That's right. It's just going to happen while they're there. That's true. Like camping. I mean, if you think about it, if you think about movie posters, whenever it's a movie about, what we call buddy movies, if it's two male buddies on the poster, they're always side by side looking forward, or whatever they're doing. They're in a war, whatever. And almost every time it's a girl movie, they're facing each other, often like staring each other down. So it's a little bit different. It's different. But yeah, I mean, guys need to share deep parts of me. You're right. There needs to be an excuse. We're doing something else, and then we'll do this. We're not just going to get together to do lunch and talk about our life. Let's do something manly. Something like that, yeah. Something that's going to, give us arteriosclerosis when we're 35. That kind of stuff. Let's go do it, man. The male eating contest. That's the secret, by the way. When I reach a certain age, and it's like, I'm no longer going to prove my masculinity by how much I'm going to eat. That's just stupid. But if you're a guy, you have to make that moment. Some guys never do. They're just like, well, finally I said to my friend, you are no longer going to bring that nasty cheese dip. That's not even real cheese. Whatever. That's it. There's no reason why I'm not proving anything to myself by eating that stuff. It's not even real food. And we just stop it. And I really think I just stopped doing all that stuff because I have high cholesterol in my family. And that may have been what made me lactose intolerant, because I just said, that's it. No more milk, no more cheese, no more butter. I gave away a little bit of cheese if I had pizza every so, but I mean, no more I'm not going to eat cheese for anything. Maybe that's why I'm shocked by my body. But it was my father, like so many men, is on these pills to lower his cholesterol. So I'm not going to put myself on those nasty pills, So I brought my cholesterol way down just by diet, A lot of diabetics could actually solve things by diet, but it's got to be pretty severe. But it's like, our whole world is about put you on pills, put you on pills, put you on pills. The pharmaceutical industry. They're evil. Anyway, except when I need drugs. But anyway, so he's hanging around dark house. I had one student that wrote her essay, and she thought the dark house was a house of prostitution. This was a wacko girl. I don't remember her name now, but I think you've read that wrong, okay? I don't know where she even got that idea from. Yeah, I mean, dark out, but you have to read the rest of the poem. But I mean, I don't know. I can't even remember. I should have kept that thing because it was like, this is wacko. Anyway, the dark house. So there he is. He remembers when they were coming together, right? And he says, so quickly waiting for a hand. There it is, a hand that can be clasped no more. Right there it is. The hand's reaching out, and then it's not there. I mean, we can almost feel it as we move from stanza 1 to stanza 2. Oh yeah, that's what he's trying to do. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's true. He would be. That's right. He would go get it. That's right. Let me get you, hug you. That boy is obsessed. Oh, Wuthering Heights we're doing? Oh, House of Prostitution. Yeah, that's weird. That's just the dark house. Oh, maybe you can see it. I don't know. Maybe with guilt. Maybe that's why he's guilty, because he's creeping away from it. I mean, if you've ever read Portrait of the Artist as a young man, there is a scene kind of like that. Right? What did Chesterton say? Every man that knocks on a brothel door is looking for God. Isn't that wild? What he's saying is that there's a deeper desire that's been twisted. Only Chesterton can say a phrase like that. Wow. What's that?
That's true, I guess.
Yeah, it's deep down. Our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. What are we looking? But we go off. I mean, that's what Lewis's book Pilgrim's Regress is all about. He's trying to find the light, and he just keeps going astray. He goes off this, goes up, becomes a business major. See, that would have been you leading astray, but you held on. Anyway, a hand that can be clasped no more. Behold me, for I cannot sleep, and like a guilty thing I creep at earliest morning to the door. What kind of a guilt is he feeling? Have you ever heard this phrase? What guilt? Survivor guilt, right? What are some people that felt survivor guilt? Would have been the people that survived the Holocaust. Often they were glad that they survived, but often they felt, and that's a good example because so many people died, right? There's a sense of survivor guilt. I think that's what Sophia was just trying to say about her boyfriend. He's feeling guilty, and of course he didn't die. He's still with us, but it is difficult. Why did God take that person and leave me? People do struggle with that, a sense of guilt. And like a guilty thing I creep at earliest morning to the door. It's like he's hanging around, but he won't go there. He is not here, but far away. Now, that's how we want to read it because of the line, but it really is, he is not here, but far away the noise of life begins again. But you almost want to read it that way.
So on the subject of the guilt, so he's like going back to the places where he went with his friend, talking about like he's waiting for a hand almost that can't be clasped.
Right.
You think he's like like some people, they try to pretend like nothing's happened.
Oh,
and like,
maybe.
It's kind of the same. It's like, I know I should be moving on and processing my
Right.
life, but I'm just pretending like it didn't happen
Okay.
and everything's the same and normal and stuff.
So maybe that's the guilt that he's, or even a feeling of I'm holding him back somehow. Let him go. Don't hold him back. But
Yeah, like he's creeping
Yeah.
out. He doesn't want people who are telling him he should move on and process to like move.
Right.
Like he's going back and revisiting and holding on so tightly and refusing to let go.
so maybe he feels guilty before God in that sense. And you do have to let people go. I mean, it is difficult. And if you've lost anybody, there are difficult times when you hear something like a song that you both liked, and you're just you almost expect them to come around the corner and be there. And so you're right. I've got to stop doing this. I've got to stop haunting these alleyways and just accept it. But it's hard. And as you could probably guess, Tennyson's family all grieved together, but they moved on, and Tennyson sort of stayed in his grief for a much longer time, which was difficult. And by the way, I think I told you his sister did marry someone else, so that was nice. Now, have you ever heard that phrase? He is not here. Probably the most. Yeah, it's the Bible. Again, probably the most joyous things ever heard. When the women came to the tomb to treat the body, they heard the angel say, "What? He is not here. He is risen." Right? He is not here. He is risen. Right? This is he is not here. Boom. Hard stop. I mean, it's a semicolon, but hard stop. So it's almost like we have one event without one event. Yeah, it's like death without resurrection. Good Friday without Easter Sunday. Right? I mean, it's stark. He is not here. Boom. If it wasn't for that he is risen, those would be the worst words ever said. But far away the noise of life begins again, and ghastly through the drizzling rain, on the bald street breaks the blank day. Now these are 4-beat lines. He is not here, but far away. The noise of life begins again. But look at that last line. On the bald street breaks the blank day. It is really heavy. And I myself, I almost hear like the nails being driven into the coffin here. Boom. Except there's 5 of them, but boom, boom. And then those heavy B sounds. The bald street breaks the blank day, what we call alliteration, right? And alliteration is just so deeply ingrained in English, right? That's really what Beowulf doesn't use rhyme, it uses alliteration. And other, early poetry in England uses that. That's it.
That's so cool.
It is, and people love it.
Cool thing I thought when learning about those poems and stuff, I was like, instead of writing the sounds at the end, you write the sounds at the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right. That's right. Front rhyme or something. Yeah, I like an initial rhyme, and it's used. And good speakers always use it. Good preachers will always use that. Oh, I guess you're right. Yeah,
Cliche Baptist preacher thing to do.
I know it is.
Alliterated sermon.
That's right. All the sounds.
Words and threes too.
I guess it is. Yeah, bald street breaks the blank day. That's true. Bald breaks the
The
blank.
Anglo-Saxon thing as well.
Oh, that's true. Because there's 4 stresses, but usually 3. Yeah, usually the first 2 and then the third. And like I said, we'll see with Lord of the Rings. Most of the poems that the Rohirrim speak are in alliterative verse because they are the Anglo-Saxons. And actually, you know what else is in alliterative verse? Remember when Treebeard talks about the different people groups?
Now the lore of living creatures, first named the elves.
I was hoping you were going to prove your nerdom by giving the whole thing. Okay, you're on the brink. I mean, if you stop and think, right? Half hobbits, hole dweller, half-grown hobbits, hole dwellers. See, HH, and then there's another H on the other side. So that and of course, Fangorn Forest is pretty close to Rohirrim, so it is again using the alliterative verse. Okay, okay. One of the I don't know if any of you have gone through the grieving process, but one of the things that's difficult when you're grieving is you are like in this deep grief, and what does the rest of the world do? It just goes on, uncaring, right? Ghastly through the drizzle on the breaks. It still goes on. You're like, at least hopefully only temporarily, sort of stuck, and the rest of the world. It's very, very difficult. It almost seems cruel that the world can keep going on, that's the way he's feeling. So again, how can it go on? It's so callous, like the world doesn't care about his grief. It's callous. It goes on. Only he is stuck, sort of frozen there in space. And again, all of this though is part of the grieving process. that you have to work through. It is a process, as people tell you. Okay, look at page 183. It's number 21. Number 21 is, I would say, the first time when Tennyson, the individual, lonely, romantic griever, is going to come face to face with the Victorian age. But he's not going to be ready to embrace it. He's going to move it. But we're going to start here in number 21. You'll see it. I hope you'll recognize it. When so far he's been pretty much in his individual grief, but slowly he's going to have to start dealing with the rest of the world. And actually, the very fact that he wrote poem number 21 shows that he's moving beyond individual grief to wrestle with deeper things. I'll explain why. It begins, I sing to him that rests below, and since the grasses round me wave, I take the grasses of the grave and make them pipes whereon to blow. By writing this section, and actually he continues it through the next 5 sections, he realizes that I'm no longer an individual griever. I'm now a poet writing an epic about grief, and I need to make use of conventions. Like when Virgil wrote his epic, he made use of epic conventions, like Odysseus made a descent into the underworld, so Aeneas has to make a descent into the underworld. Achilles had a really cool shield, so Aeneas has to have a cool shield. There were funeral games in the Iliad, so it's a convention. And there's a certain kind, do you know what we call a poem that's about grieving? If you know what the word is. Here it's you said an elegy. What's the most famous title of a poem that begins Elegy in? You've probably heard Elegy in a country churchyard. You've probably heard that. The grave's a fine and wonderful place, but none, I think, do there embrace. You've probably heard that. Who does? Oh, Bolson really likes that poem? I mean, yeah, that's true. That is a good point. It's by Thomas Gray. And it's what, if I had, a forever in time in class, that's often considered what they call a sort of proto-romantic poem. I mean, we generally start romanticism with Blake and then Wordsworth, but there are some early intimations of it with some of these poems that are more melancholy and self-conscious and things. It's like it's a warm-up for that. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me try to get through this quickly. So he says, and this should remind you of the introduction to the Songs of Innocence. Okay, so there's an elegy, but there's a certain subgenre of elegy that we call, I wonder if you know, Bolson and I love these, they're called pastoral elegies. And I don't know if you've ever read Lycidas by Milton, but what a pastoral elegy is, it's an elegy, you're grieving, but often what you do is you depict the person who died as if he were a shepherd. And in grieving the loss of your friend, you're grieving the loss of a simpler pastoral way of life. And so just the fact that he would write a pastoral, it shows he's suddenly realizing, wait a minute, I'm a poet writing in a tradition and not just an individual griever, and so I need to include this. There needs to be a poem, and we don't read it all, but the 22, 3, 4, 5, a bunch of them continue in that mode that goes all the way back to a writer named Theocritus who lived in Alexandria about 200 BC, 250 BC. So he's already consciously doing it. Now, while he's there and weeping, 3 travelers walk by, and they all have a different response to Tennyson, the romantic griever. So the first one, the traveler hears me now and then, and sometimes harshly will he speak. This fellow would make weakness weak, and melt the waxen hearts of men. So how would you describe this response?
This guy's like, emotion is unmanly.
Exactly, that's what it is. Come on, man, good, suck it up. That doesn't help when you say that to people. If you've ever been grieving, somebody will always say, well, you just got to suck it up. Really, that doesn't help, okay? I don't think it ever helps, okay? But anyway, people say it. There's going to be somebody that says it. Usually it's a guy. Suck it up, okay? And he's afraid that if you keep being a girly man here, you're gonna make everybody weep. So stop. That's one, okay? That person, I would call him callous, maybe. The second one, another answer is, let him be. He loves to make parade of pain, that with his piping he may gain the praise that comes to constancy. So if the first one is callous, what would you call this guy?
Kind of contemptuous.
Good, contemptuous, good.
Being melodramatic.
Good.
Trying to make himself the center of attention.
He's an emo boy, right? He's cynical. He's
He enjoys his own grief.
Good.
What they're saying about
And so, yeah, come on, yeah, you're in your own pity party. What's the world's smallest violin? Do people do that or whatever?
I do this all the time.
Yeah, well, whatever it is, yeah. Get all your pity party. Wait, what do you say? Oh, I didn't hear. Say it again. Oh, yes, that's right. That's right. SpongeBob. So some critics say that you really should pronounce his name Jakes, which is another name for a chamber pot. So they're making fun of him. Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's how you can figure it out. Oh, it's always going to make fun of the French. It's always the right time to do that. Yeah. Anyway, a third is wroth. He's angry. And notice the first guy got 2 lines, the second guy gets 4 lines, the third one gets 8 lines. So let's see who this person is. A third is wroth. Is this an hour for private sorrow's barren song, when more and more the people throng the chairs and thrones of civil power? A time to sicken and to swoon, when science reaches forth her arms to feel from world to world and charms her secret from the latest moon? What is this guy saying? Yeah. That's right. What do you? So I call this guy a Victorian businessman. The Victorian is saying, hey, you romantic, get on with your life. We're building a brave new world here, and this is not a time for personal sorrow. This is a time to get with the program and build utopia. So this is in some ways the first time, and there's little glimpses of it, but this is a Victorian mentality hitting against his romantic one. Let's go, do something. Get a job. Okay. What is Robert? Jordan Peterson? Start by cleaning your room. Whatever. It's 12 steps. Jordan Peterson. Start by cleaning your. Stand up straight. All this sort of stuff. Anyway. Now look, he's been attacked, but let's see. We'll end here. He says, "Behold, ye speak an idle thing. Ye never knew the sacred dust. I do but sing because I must, and pipe but as the linnets sing. And one is glad, her note is gay, for now her little ones have ranged. And one is sad, her note is changed, because her brood is stolen away." So, I'm not weeping because I'm a girly man. I'm not weeping to impress people. I'm not weeping because I only care. Why am I weeping? I can't do anything else, right? I'm weeping just like a what does what? Yeah. And why does a bird sing? It sings, right? Sometimes the bird sings when it's happy. The bird sings when it's sad, right? What poet in the Old Testament sings when he's happy and sings when he's sad? Yeah, David. Think about the Psalms, right? This is it. It just comes out of me. I can't do. The emotion comes out of me. Now, what's interesting about the way he's responding to this guy is his response is totally what? He's comparing himself to a bird. Who does that? Romantic poets. Okay, so he's not ready to directly address the Victorian guy on his own terms. He sinks back to a romantic defense. Okay, I sing because he's back to Keats. Like I told you, he started as a disciple of Keats, if you will. You didn't know him, but as a disciple of Keats and wanting to do that. So he's not. You look like you want to say something. Oh, good. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Right. That's a wonderful appreciative. Sing here. And I know he watches me. Yeah, I like that one. You know that one? That's like the chorus. I can't remember the rest part, but that's the chorus that you sing. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
I can hear the tune in my head, but all I remember is I remember singing it and being like, this is really hard to sing off. His eye is on the sparrow.
Oh yeah, it is kind of hard. This tune.
It's not that eye. It's like
I know he watches. His eye is on the sparrow. So anyway. Well, good job. Oh, man, I want to keep going. Well, we'll pick up exactly where we left off last time. And like I told you, since the papers are due, you don't have to do that, okay?